Hi everyone, thanks for joining the webinar, Fresh Approaches to Digital Patient Recruitment Campaigns. As we are waiting for the webinar to load up and for attendees to sign in, we are going to run a quick poll that you'll see in the panel. It'd be great if you could respond to this. Have you ever used digital marketing to recruit patients for clinical trials? Can see people are answering. That's fantastic. Throughout the webinar, if you guys have any questions, in the right-hand side panel for the webinar, please feel free to send questions in there, and we will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Fantastic. So it looks like we have a real mix of experience on the call today. That's great. It's good to know that this subject is resonating with the industry, and also that there's a lot of people that are coming along today to learn more about how digital marketing can increase the efficiency of patient recruitment for clinical trials. Perfect. So fresh approaches to digital patient recruitment campaigns. Before I hand across to our guest speakers today, Dan and Hugh, I just wanted to give you some insight into Localized, who we are as an organization and who we are in relation to life sciences and digital marketing. So Localized, we are a global language service organization. We help a number of clients across a number of different industry sectors manage their content and also localize it. As it relates to the subject matter today, we do have a specialist business unit with a focus on life science clients across medical device, CRO, and pharma. And also the division that Dan and Hugh are from, we have over 120 digital specialists that are helping our clients with their digital marketing needs. If we relate our experience in management of content to the life science space and look at the journey of content for a drug molecule from a pharmaceutical perspective, we help our clients achieve their goals across many sections. So really at the start of the journey for a drug molecule, we help with the localization and filing of patents, the localization of content throughout R&D, through the regulatory submissions of centralized and decentralized procedures for regulatory affairs, pre and post marketing pharmacovigilance, the product launch, labeling and RFUs of these products, drug molecules, etc., and then obviously the marketing of those products. As it relates to the subject here, most of the content that we see that is patient facing actually comes from the R&D section of our business. Over the past few years, we've actually seen that as the life science industry goes through its own digital transformation, we're seeing more and more patient-facing content that is intended to be utilized across digital assets. So a lot of content that is for e-consent, e-pro, e-coa, patient-facing platforms, and obviously intended use for patient recruitment campaigns. We're thinking, as we're managing this content, can we do things better? Can we utilize digital marketing techniques on this content that we're receiving, and also apply digital marketing techniques for patient recruitment campaigns as a whole? So as we get on to the webinar, we're going to hear from Dan and Hugh, who are going to talk us through a framework that Localized utilize to create campaigns in a variety of industries, so that they can ensure that the right message reaches the target audience of our clients. So in relation to this, the right messages are being targeted towards relevant patient audiences. In this session, Dan and Hugh will talk to us about how digital is transforming clinical trial recruitment. And as we're going through this digital transformation of patient recruitment, the many different types of platforms and technologies that are available to our clients that we can help delve through and explain and pick the right ones for our clients. Understanding how to maximize these campaigns, and also as importantly, is the previous 3 points. As clinical trials are getting more and more global, there is a real need for cultural adaptation of these campaigns, so they're really resonating with target patient audiences. So at this stage, I'm just going to hand over to our guest speakers to introduce themselves. Over to you, Dan and Hugh.
Okay, hello, I'm Dan Fallon, the MD of SearchStar, a We Localized company that manages international multilingual advertising for companies across the world.
Hello, my name's Hugh. I'm the Managing Director of Adapt Worldwide, which is a We Localized company focused on international content opportunities and international digital marketing.
Okay, so Hugh and I are going to spend about the next 20 minutes talking about how we can make the digital advertising and international clinical trial recruitment more efficient and more effective. I'll be covering off the broader principles of effective digital advertising, and Hugh will be focusing on the linguistic, cultural, and creative aspects. And we know there are mixed levels of digital advertising knowledge in the webinar, so apologies to the advertising nerds, but we're going to try and keep it quite top level. If any of you want to get more detailed with us afterwards, we'll be delighted. Nerdy about digital advertising is definitely our comfort zone. We all know that the consumers migrated during lockdown towards digital, with traditional media's decline accelerating, and ad budgets have also gone into digital, and in part logically because that's where the consumer's gone, but also because the digital ad platforms are just vastly more efficient than traditional media was. The targeting is infinitely more better, it's far more precise, the ad formats are increasingly sophisticated, and the response mechanisms are increasingly friction-free. And by friction-free, we mean it's just very simple, the forms autofill, and the customer just sort of finds it increasingly simple. It's no sort of step away from what they were doing to fill in the form, which is what largely we want as advertisers. So the bulk of you probably don't do advertising as your main job. It's a fraction of your role, or maybe you've got oversight of an ad budget. And in preparing for today, I did think about presenting a sort of grand theory of clinical trial advertising. But in reality, the more I thought about it, patient recruitment is actually, and from our experience, actually relatively simple advertising. It's lead generation. It's about getting people's attention, getting their confidence, persuading them to hand over their contact information. And so in thinking about it as lead generation, I thought there were a few useful mantras that are worth considering. First one's up on the screen at the moment. Does the campaign reach the right people with the right message at the right time, which is a sort of fairly standard, is this advertising any good? Are the right people seeing the ad at the right message at the right time? Another one that I liked from a few years ago, slightly more recently, is the ad that I'm seeing personally useful and immediately actionable? Is it something that chimes with me, and am I in a position now to take action and respond? The other way I contemplated talking about taking this through was talking about it as push versus pull. Push being media like Facebook, where you interrupt a target audience's feed scrolling by pushing an ad out at them, urging them to take action when actually they were just sitting on the bus on their way to work, versus pull, which would typically be advertising that is triggered by a search. The consumer's actively seeking out some information where you're coming forward, you're coming forward as the relevant solution, where they're kind of in lean forward mode of sort of consuming advertising, whereas in push they're sitting back and the advertising is slightly the pushier party. It's push versus pull. In actual fact, instead of all of these, we've opted for framing the discussion within a methodology called the 4 A's. It's something that we were introduced to by Google, with whom we are a significant partner. The We Localized digital marketing arm buys around $80 million worth of international multilingual advertising on behalf of its clients from Google every year, a bit less from Facebook. And the 4 A's methodology is one that we found increasingly or useful for getting the basics right and then layering up the sophistication. Getting the campaign assets in place, looking at the target audiences, looking at the attribution, and then looking at automating digital ad campaigns. So in this, starting with assets, which are the building blocks of the campaign, we're talking about the lists of search keywords we're showing ads to, the text ads that we want to display against those searches, the Facebook ads we want to put in the feeds of our target audiences, and the landing pages and the website that the traffic is being directed to. So, starting with search, I've been doing search for a long time, and the magic word for search is always, how do we make clinical trial search advertising as efficient and effective as possible? Is relevance, relevance, relevance. It's actually quite simple. Imagine the consumer has searched for UK paid clinical trials. The consumer wants to see a hyper-relevant answer, ideally offering them a paid clinical trial in their area that's available for them, that's crafted for their age group, for their circumstances. That's what they're after. The advertiser wants to deliver an ad that, whilst accurate, is also perfectly crafted to meet the searcher's requirements. The consumer wants to see a great ad, the advertiser wants to show them a great ad, and Google only gets paid if the ad gets clicked on. So they also massively encourage and incentivized well-crafted relevant ads. And what they don't want to do, and what nobody wants, is to show irrelevant, not get clicked on, poor consumer experience ads. So when it's done well, it's a virtuous circle, and the consumer gets what they want, the advertiser gets the click, Google gets paid. And that's what we're all trying to drive towards. And any time that that isn't being delivered, you have an inefficient ad campaign.
Dan, is this one of the reasons why we see digital patient recruitment as being more cost effective versus traditional recruitment methods?
Yes, because I suppose traditional recruitment methods are far more shotgun. I mean, you're putting an ad out there that has far more wastage, and with search, you've got the joy that the customer is, you've got that magic thing that the customer is actually directly looking for what you're after. It's the reason that search has become such an enormous cash cow for Google, is because it's got that sort of yellow pages aspect to it of, you know, you're managing to identify the people who are looking for, in this instance, a paid clinical trial, which not everyone is. And you can put ads in front of them, as opposed to just advertising in, say, student newspapers.
Great, thank you.
Okay. That requirement for relevance can be more challenging when you're running across multiple markets in multiple languages. However, if you plan carefully, thinking about the search phrasing, researching the search phrases properly with linguists who sort of understand the circumstances, get your ads right, crafted for those audiences, translate the landing pages and craft the landing pages properly in the relevant languages, which is all eminently practical with planning. And actually, there are huge economies of scale if you do it well. It is all entirely doable. Unfortunately, that's exactly what the digital marketing arm of WeLocalized is set up to do: run effective, efficient, multilingual, multinational digital ad campaigns. So that's all very doable. It needs to, clearly, clinical trials can be a sensitive market, and we need to be mindful of the media owner policies. Google only allow clinical trial advertising in certain countries. It also doesn't allow clinical trial ads to promote prescription drugs, create misleading expectations for a product being tested, or imply that the product being tested is safe, obviously. And Facebook won't allow ads that imply knowledge of personal attributes. So it doesn't want ads running that reference information. So you can't run ads that reference that people might be, that sort of are, you know, that you are suffering from anxiety. You've got to get calculated quite carefully. Facebook is especially paranoid these days about being seen in any way as big brother-y, and their regulations are quite tight. Fortunately, we are Google Premier partners and we're Facebook marketing partners, and we've got strong relationships with both of them as well as their equivalents around the world. Staying close to them, understanding the regulations, as well as working closely, obviously, with clients to make sure that we're delivering there. When we're talking about assets, I've spoken a little bit about getting the ads right, and Hugh, I think we'll talk a little bit about those, getting them right further on. But we should also talk quite heavily, not just on the ads, but also about the landing pages and the website that the ad traffic arrives at after clicking on the ad. I think we all know the disappointment of clicking through and hitting a page that is poorly put together. The vast majority of us then won't leave our contact details. And I mean, frankly, it often really hurts that we pay for traffic, we work very hard to persuade the consumers to click on ads, and then to land that traffic on a page that is suboptimal. It's sort of frankly negligent. we need the traffic we drive to hit pages that are designed to drive signups and response. And there's a discipline within digital marketing called conversion optimization that is all about improving existing and creating new landing pages that maximize the chance that the traffic we've paid to deliver to the website chooses to sign up and handed over those preciously guarded contact details. And what you've got on the screen in front of you is a scorecard that we've developed that we think is an incredibly useful way of looking at a page that you're driving traffic to and consider and sort of asking the slightly hard questions about, is this page really good enough? Is it relevant? Is whatever the person's come from, whether they're on a previous page within your website and they click through wanting to know that, okay, this is the page about the clinical trials, or they clicked on an ad talking about clinical trials, is the message they're being hit with immediately saying, brilliant, I wanted some information on clinical trials and now I seem to have landed on it. I'm getting all the right messages. Is the page simple? Is there too much clutter on the page? Are there multiple, in our world, we often talk about calls to action, that, okay, if when you're looking at a page, are there multiple calls to action? Because actually, ideally, you only want one call to action, which is fill in this form. It should be very clear what the direction of travel is once you hit the page. On the persuasion side, it's in terms of unique selling points. Are they there? Are the reasons that I should get involved with this trial clearly laid out, and why with you? Is there reassurance there? Are there testimonials from people who've been it before, or the logos of the various trade bodies there to show that I'm on a proper website? And then is there a deadline? Is there a reason for doing it now, or should I, could I just as easily come back tomorrow? And ideally, you need to give me a good reason why I'm going to take action today, rather than sort of kick my action down the road. What you can see now is an example landing page critique that we typically create after going through the scorecard process. And we have quite a nice offer for all the attendees of this webinar. If you have a landing page or a key recruitment sign-up page that you'd like our conversion team, and they are extremely good, to critique using the scorecard, then please get in touch afterwards. And our conversion team would be delighted to do a free conversion review along with recommendations for any page that you've got. And you can see here, I think this is actually for a financial services app that we've sort of gone through and sort of talked about, okay, do we think it's relevant? Do we think it's simplicity? Do we think the USPs are properly displayed? Is it too cluttered? Is the call to action good enough? And we'd be delighted to let our conversion team run their eye over sort of any pages. If you want to send it through, we will give you a free view. And also the landing page scorecard, I think if you look in the sort of webinar app that we're using today, whose name I have forgotten, but there is a download there called WL Scorecard 01 that will allow you to sort of take away that and keep. Okay, now I'm going to pass across to Hugh, who will talk a little bit about the complexities of running campaigns globally. Over to you, Hugh.
Thanks, Dan. So Dan's talked a lot about Google in particular as the most important search engine in the West. There's also, when you start to run international campaigns and thinking about the assets that you need to create, there are other search engines that you need to be aware of. Here's a slide that I created, some clients, which shows you different ones in different markets. Examples that you might have heard of are Baidu in China, potentially Naver in Korea, Yandex, which is the leading Russian search engine. All of these different search engines will have their own different policies, and each one will need to have specific considerations when we're thinking about creating assets and how to run them, and those landing page considerations as well. What we're looking at here is how we can try and specify ad copy creation that works with those specific search engines and their paid search algorithms for them. And if we go into if you go to the next slide, I'll give you an example of how these can be different. So looking at different ad creation in Google versus Naver, which is South Korea's leading search engine. There's, as you can see here, read the slide. There's a lot of different kind of connotations when it comes to creating those different assets. And the way it works, necessarily the character length you'll have will absolutely have to be different. So when you're thinking about localizing your assets that you might have created for Google, generally we'll work with customers that have worked out a good way of working with Google, have really honed down their skills of creating ad copies that are within the character limits and the assets creations that are work very, very well with Google. You then have to tear up what you learn and then learn something new with Naver, as an example, for running your clinical trials in those markets. Now, these two slides have been focused on search, but if we can go to the next slide, the other part that I think Dan alluded to partly was around asset creation for social, and specifically for Facebook, Instagram, those kind of platforms. Now, this is where things get much more nuanced. This slide I created for a client around about 9 months ago. It's already completely out of date. That's due partly down to the lockdown, and also that there would be 2 platforms on there that don't exist at the moment, where which would have to be considered as part of your clinical trial marketing mix. Those would be TikTok and Snapchat. Both of those platforms have very, very well developed opportunities for advertisers to start to work with. These are very, very fast changing. Digital marketing in social continues to be fast changing. I would suggest that in search, things have calmed down a bit and you're able to spot platforms that you need to work with in specific markets. But with social media platforms, opportunities continue to arise at a very fast rate. If you can go to the next slide, please, Dan. Now I'm going to talk a bit about how you'd think about going after selecting resources for your specific markets. So for those who aren't aware, one of the best ways to go international is by working with linguists that are in market. So linguists who understand how marketing works, and preferably who understand also the clinical trial or the life sciences markets as well. Here is a really standard workflow for finding and recruiting linguists. So starting with sourcing and profiling, moving on to onboarding training, and then working out the linguists that are working very, very well in specific markets, how you can retain and engage those partners of yours to continue to work. When you're looking for partners for this type of localization, you need to be thinking about finding someone, I would suggest, with a marketing passion, someone who understands not just specific platforms, so for example, Naver or Line or TikTok or even Google, but really has a passion for marketing and interest in driving actions that you're looking to achieve through your digital marketing. This will change, in my experience, with verticals like clinical trials, that is getting up to speed where other verticals have been for a long time. This will stop you treating specific platforms as testing and sort of forgetting about them. Like we've run a Facebook campaign, it worked or it didn't work, and then we move on. This is much more about building out a business as usual approach to advertising, using marketers, native marketers who understand marketing. You go to the next slide, please, Dan. I'll talk a bit more about building out localization. So people on the call who understand localization understand the linear nature of localization. So generally you'll have a source and you'll localize the target. We would always recommend creating lots of different variations on ad copy for all the platforms that we've spoken about. All of them defer to A/B testing, different types of versions that you can then see which ones are working, change on the fly, and optimize to create the most effective return on investment for the actions that you're trying to drive. So whenever you're thinking about starting to localize your ad copy, this will be very different if you are localizing posters to go in surgeries and things. This really needs to be considered, and you're looking for your linguists and your partners in market to do is to create different variations, rationalize why they did that, and also create back translations as well, so you can try and understand them. Remove the ones that you don't think will work from a compliance point of view or from a brand point of view, and then run the others and see how they're working to get the most effective return on investment. It is a classic moment where people fall down by not creating multi-variants on ad copy.
Okay, thank you, Hugh. So we've looked at assets, we've identified the right search phrases, the ads, the landing pages, the websites, and we've translated it all with appropriate cultural sensitivity. Now we need to look at the audience targeting, and we are doing 4 A's, but we're probably, rest assured, we've probably spent half the time on assets. We'll speed up. Audience planning is crucial. Clearly, when recruiting for a clinical trial, identifying target participants is crucial. Digital media allows, as I think we all know, fabulous targeting by sex, by age, location, interests, and it also allows us to scale the campaigns to ensure we reach enough people to get the desired participant volumes. In comparison with traditional media, it's infinitely more flexible in that way, and the ability to just sort of get it running at sort of high speeds very quickly or to turn it off. We need to balance this scale, though, with a focus on getting the quality candidates needed to fulfill the trial requirements. Audience planning, therefore, segmentation to ensure the correct demographic splits are coming into the trial, funnel staging to ensure the correct cohorts are being delivered on time into the testing centres with the right sort of timescales, i.e. not all at the beginning, but sort of staged through so the delivery is correct, as well as then creative that is relevant and sort of crafted to each of these audiences.
Dan, if we're looking to target people for specific clinical trials or diseases, how do we know that people we're targeting are relevant to those campaigns?
We don't strictly. We can use, and we especially can't sort of refer, so we can't, it's very rare that you can, I mean, you can target, if say heart disease or something like that, you could run ads on heart disease websites, sort of looking for those, for sort of people who've obviously gone onto those sort of patient group websites, etc. But in terms of, in the sort of broader media, if they search for it, that if they search for trials for heart disease, that's all, that's relatively simple. But in social, there are ways you could do it, as in sort of people who don't exercise, people who possibly eat too much, or whatever any of the other indicators are that may make you think, or possibly people who like or are associated with social groups on Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is to do with heart disease. But it's a blend of using the information you can while staying within the regulations, and possibly just going, sometimes having to just go broad saying, are you, and to sort of get the groups of people in.
Okay.
I think the sort of digital marketing is slightly, sometimes almost has more information than it's allowed to use. So we have to stay on the right side. Where was I? And sorry, over to Hugh quickly.
Okay, when we're thinking about audiences as well in different markets, you need to be aware of cultural sensitivity. So there are three things that we generally consider. Lots of different ways of doing it, but three things you can remember are aesthetics, imagery, and naming and slogans. And I'll go through one by one. First one is there's, as I'm sure you're all aware of, that's the flag of Bermuda. One consideration that we've had with work that we've done before is around colours, and an automotive brand that we were working with was thinking about launching a brand new livery, a brand new color palette for its brand in internationally, and was looking for feedback in market. And the one that I always remember, always pass on to people, is that the color silver in Bermuda is not an aspirational color. So whenever if any of you are thinking about running some clinical trial ads in Bermuda, hopefully very soon, you need to be aware that you shouldn't be using the color silver. Next up is imagery, and this is specifically to do with facial piercings in Mexico. We might think that in the West, facial piercings have become a bit more mainstream in the last 10 years. Certainly over, if you think about maybe in the 1960s, so any imagery that you might be using with people with facial piercings on wouldn't necessarily be would potentially be a positive sign that your brand is on message and very clued in with cultural coolness of culture at the moment. That would not be the case in Mexico. So absolutely not. If you're ever thinking about running any advertising in Mexico, please make sure that you don't use any facial piercings. That's seen as a massive negative side. And again, that's how we generally try and work. We run a lot of analysis in those specific markets and try and speak to people who are in market and work through these different connotations. Another example of this, the final example here, is around naming and slogans. Working with one of the leading music streaming companies, they were looking to run a campaign recently around the concept of who wears the crown. So there was lots of regal associations and things like that. That concept, as we gave them that feedback, it would absolutely only work in English-speaking markets, as I'm sure a lot of the people on the call will understand that crown, if you translate into myriad of European Romance languages, is corona, the Latin for corona. Obviously a big faux pas and something that we managed to catch before any wider sloganeering was anticipated by the brand. So in conclusion, around this slide, when you're thinking about your audiences, also be culturally sensitive to how they might want to interact. with your brand.
Okay, thank you, Hugh. Okay, so with the assets created and optimized and as sharp as they possibly can be, and the audience agreed, identified, and the ads adjusted to fit into them, we can start running the ads. However, we are swiftly going to become interested in the next of our A's, which is attribution. Back onto famous ad slogans, and at a base level, attribution is seeing what is working and what isn't. And there's a famous phrase in advertising, widely attributed to multiple people, that I know that half the money I spend on advertising are wasted. My only problem is that I don't know which half. And this is very much a sort of 1950s advertising thing when you're spending a lot of money on telly and on posters and trying to work out what's working and what isn't. And with digital, obviously, this doubt should no longer be the case. Whereas 20 years ago, if you wanted to recruit 50 to 60-year-old male smokers within a 30-minute drive time of a research center in Dusseldorf, you'd be struggling around with local newspapers and radio stations. You'd be trying to persuade the managers in doctors' surgeries, clinics, pharmacies to put up posters. But now with the social media platforms like Facebook and all-seeing digital media owners like Google, we know pretty much who we are advertising to. We can see who's responding and who's not. And we can see which bits of the ad copy and which images are making the most impact and driving the most signups. We can see sort of which ads are getting clicked on or which not, and the sign up bits we can see, because normally when people click on ads, there are tracking systems that drop cookies on browsers or use other techniques, so that when the person who clicked on that ad is seen to have filled in the form, then a message gets sent back to the ad serving system saying the person who clicked on that ad over there, they've just filled in the form, and then the person who does my job can then at the end of every day or every week or every month can go through and say, okay, fine, so I spent that amount of money there, that many people filled in the form, whereas I spent that amount of money over there and only that many people filled in the form. And we can start to think about what worked and what didn't. Attribution can be more complex than that. So in that terms of that what I described there was just a sort of very linear, they clicked on the ad, did they respond, didn't they respond? And media channels are becoming, or a lot of digital media channels are sort of directly effective, but there's still quite a significant element of attribution in terms of especially working out how they interact with each other. It may look like a search for your company's name drove the application, but what about the sort of Facebook ad or the poster in the hospital waiting room that made them make that search, that put them in market? And I don't want to overblow the complexity of attribution in clinical trial advertising, because actually it's vastly, or typically vastly less complex than, say, the buying journey that leads somebody to buy a new Mercedes. If you think about why you chose a new Mercedes, was it the TV ad? Was it the Formula One sponsorship? Was it the nice person in the showroom? Was it the poster that you saw every day on the way to work? Or was it the enthusiastic owner who's been, reassured and persuaded by Mercedes that they made the best decision, and they're so evangelical, they want you to make the same decision. So that purchase journey and attribution as to how all of the various bits of marketing work does need disentangling, so that we know exactly what the optimal mix is to try and work out. And there are tools and models that we can do where, we can do a lot of analytics work to sort of understand the typical journeys that people are making that lead them to do the trials. As part of that, within We Localize, we work with all of our advertising clients and to understand how their advertising is working, and then create Google Data Studio dashboards. And if any of you aren't using or haven't come across Google Data Studio, it is a wonderful tool, and it allows you to share data and bring data out from sort of multiple sources. It allows us to bring out all of the KPIs from client campaigns, bringing all of the media owner, all the spend data from all the campaigns, how many ads have been run, how many impressions have been run, what days they ran. Clients can sort at the top and adjust dates. The whole thing, it allows you to bring quite a lot of advertising information in at one place and then share it with the people. It allows clients and partner agencies exactly what's going on live. There's no more waiting for monthly reports. Instead, instant stakeholder-friendly data that you can share within your organizations. If any of you want to know about Data Studio dashboards, we would love to talk to you about them. So please get in touch. We'll show you a few that we've done and how they can work. So that is attribution. The final A is automation. When we have the best possible assets, the audiences are in place, we know what's working and what's driving the successful applicants. We then use data and automation to scale the advertising using all the data points that we've got. What devices are mobiles better than desktops? Locations, are people in cities better than rural locations? Are people in the north better than people in the south? One country versus another. Previous website visits, are people who've already visited the website more receptive to the advertising than people for whom it's their first time? Are people who are interested in cycling more interested in the advertising? Any data point we can to try and make the advertising more effective. So what pages they looked at last time and for how long, the ad variations, the landing page variations. When Hugh was talking about multiple creative, we can also serve multiple versions of the landing page. We can crunch that data, sort of it went beyond being what sort of our sort of human teams can do. So there's AI and machine learning crunching that data to identify the sort of optimal ad mix and asset mix and scale the campaign to drive up efficiency and lead volumes. And sometimes I would admit in clinical trial advertising, the data sample sizes aren't there for us to do the full bells and whistles, but we utilize all in terms of to do sort of really subtle variations between copy to test them. Sometimes you'll need to show the ad sort of thousands or tens of thousands of times to get proper statistical sample sizes, but we use whatever data we can to get the best possible results. Okay, so that's a brief overview on how we see the most efficient and effective ways to run international clinical trials advertising, using the 4 A's, getting the assets in place, identifying the right audiences, understanding the ad attribution, and then using automation to scale it and make it as efficient as we possibly can to achieve the results you're after. Okay, now over to Alex now to sort of wrap up and manage whatever questions we have. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, great. Thanks to Dan and Hugh for walking us through the opportunities and a framework that digital marketing can bring to patient recruitment campaigns. I think whilst digital marketing will not replace traditional recruitment methods, it's certainly something that can be run alongside these campaigns as a complementary effort and a cost-effective effort to drum up and create interest within these patient recruitment campaigns across multiple locales. Thanks a lot to the audience as well. We hope that you found the talk useful. We are doing a summer series of these types of events, so look out for those. On the screen here, you'll see links to our LinkedIn pages. And obviously, as Dan said earlier in the presentation, we are offering some free landing page reviews and also offering discounts for partners out there that want to continue the conversation and run some digital patient recruitment campaigns with us. Similarly, if you do have some questions after this presentation or you do want to engage with us further, feel free to reach us at lsdigital@welocalized.com. Also in the panel, there are some handouts. So one slide that Dan went through, the landing page scorecard, and also the webinar resources. We'll also email these out to the attendees as well. Perfect. So thanks again, Dan and Hugh, that's much appreciated. We do actually have some questions that we are going to run through. And the first one is to Dan, I think.
Okay.
How do I know what to test when I'm creating assets?
The answer, probably test what you care about. Don't try and test too much. And don't try and test anything too subtle. I touched on that earlier on with, well, you certainly need high volumes to get good answers. But I would urge, I think sometimes people try and test too much. I test, if there's, I try and answer a couple, two big questions where there's a proper split of opinion. That's simplest in terms of should I go route. So answer a couple of big questions rather than too much. Is that a good enough answer? So 2 big creative variations, or is channel A versus channel B? And then once you've got the answers to those big questions, then move down the sort of list into the sort of sub questions.
Okay, perfect. And we have another one for yourself, Dan.
Okay.
How do I know, it's quite a good one actually, how do I know whether I'm paying for someone twice?
Possibly you are. and possibly you want to pay for somebody twice. Sometimes, I mean, in terms of Google will sometimes screen out double clicks. If the same person repeatedly clicks, then media owners will often screen that out because they're thinking it's click fraud. But often, like in the example I gave earlier on, it may take, Mercedes will pay for somebody hundreds of times before they buy a car. Where you may need to show them a Facebook ad multiple times before they then make the search, and you'll pay them again when they click on their ad. So it is quite possible you're paying for somebody twice. We have systems that do what are called reach and frequency analysis, which show sort of how broadly we've spread the advertising and actually how many times we've shown an ad to somebody. And sometimes the intention is to show the ad several times. If you think about the way people like the big detergent soap powder brands, they've got active policies of repetitively showing ads to get you into it. So it's possible that's what you want to do. We can tell you if it's going on, and we can tell you normally with good attribution, we can tell you whether it's a good idea or not.
Great, I agree. I think certainly multiple touch points with patients is definitely going to increase the likelihood of them to reach out and join up to these trials.
Yeah, so multimedia is generally reckoned to be a good idea.
Yeah,
for sort of more sophisticated communication.
Fantastic. This one's for Hugh. It's with regards to talent and your slides relating to localization and marketing and which specialists to use. Do we have any examples as an organization where we've used blended specialists for patient recruitment content?
Yeah, so a lot of the times we will receive packs of content types to localize. So lots of different content types that will be relevant. There'll be some web content, FAQs, pamphlets, DTP, posters, and then also probably more than likely, and we see more and more, there'll be some paid search ads in there as well. What we're trying to do there is to use the linguists that understand the brand, have potentially been working with the brand and ourselves for a long time, and then just training them how to understand search volume analysis, understand how to spot keywords, how to create brand new search ads as they need to be done. This is just an example, by the way. And also to think about how to create those different variations rather than just taking creating from source to target. So in that sense, what we're trying to do is take the current linguists who understand that specific brand in the life sciences space, and then train them to understand how to evolve their understanding around into paid search in that example.
Perfect. I guess that's a really key point especially when we're considering that these patient recruitment campaigns are getting more and more international and global.
That's correct. Yeah, more and more.
Fantastic. Dan, if I have a new clinical trial, how quickly can I have a digital marketing recruitment campaign ready to go?
I would think we normally ask for a minimum of 5 working days. Media owners don't actually require, or digital media owners don't require sort of pre-booking time. So it's just a question of getting a proper brief, understanding it, creating the assets, sort of establishing all the billing, etc. And I'd have thought that's a minimum of 5 working days. But I think I'll probably also reference this one across to Hugh because I'm talking more about the sort of ad technology and the sort of physical structure of the campaign. I suspect, Hugh, how long would you want as a minimum to sort of translate it, culturally check it, etc.?
I definitely think we can run in parallel with what you're doing from a technical side of things. So I think there's an opportunity, yeah, around 5 working days, especially if these are markets that developed markets where there's typically linguists already set up, companies that a brand and a lot of insights and things that are already understood in those specific markets would generally, yeah, I think 5 days make absolute sense.
Ideally more. I mean, five. I think 5's in an ideal world a little bit more, but 5's as tight as I suspect it can be done.
Perfect, great. I was going to say, yeah, 5 days seems really quick, but yeah, we can work with our clients on that, I guess. So that is all the questions that we have, other than one from a member of the audience relating to the information available. We have recorded this presentation, and we will also be sending out the handouts that we've mentioned on this, so to all attendees. As that's the final set of questions, we don't have any more. I just want to thank the audience again, and also Dan and Hugh for the fantastic presentation and the information that you provided. We will reach out to attendees, as I said, with the relevant information. And again, if you are interested or if this information resonates, particularly around landing page reviews and also discussing digital patient recruitment campaigns with us, do not hesitate to reach out to us. Thanks a lot, Dan. Hugh, it's much appreciated.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.